Okay.
Tonight, guys, I'm going to tell you the story of the old house and the tree.
Stop. You said it would be again a good one.
It is a good one.
Okay. Okay.
So when I was a little guy about your age, I lived in a house in a city called Falls Church, and I went to school. The school was right down the street from where I lived, so it was easy to get to. You just walk down the street. But right across the street from my house was this old farmhouse. And this house looked like it had been there for, a long time. And there was in fact, I knew the people who lived there. They were called the O'Hallorans. And their daughter, Mary Jane, was in my class, elementary school class. But, so one night I was over there visiting with them. And her mother said, by the way, have we told you the story of this house? And I said, no, I didn't know anything. Old farmhouse, right? Well, it's kind of neat house. It had it's kind of small rooms, and then it went up 3 stories, and it had like an attic room and everything. So she said, we've lived in this house for a long time, but before we lived here, this old guy lived here, this old farmer. It was a farmhouse originally. And the story was that he had done away with his wife with an axe. And I said, yeah, that's nice. And she said, well, of course, I was just a story. It was going around. And we didn't think anything of it. So one day, she said she and I guess the daughter and maybe her brother were down in the basement doing something, and they were looking around, and they happened to notice on the floor there's this big red stain. And she said, gee, that's funny. I didn't notice that was there before. I wonder what that's from. So she went and checked. She went to the old Falls Church City Hall at that time. They had a local newspaper. And so she went and looked back at the Falls Church newspaper for, I think it was like 1870. Something like that. I can't remember the exact date. And they had a feature on this guy. And the featured article basically, said that this guy was supposed to have killed his wife by chopping her head off in the basement. And then they went on to say that the police had investigated this, but right after that happened, the guy disappeared, and so they weren't able to prosecute him for murder because he was gone. And she said, "Now, don't you think it's interesting that this guy was supposed to have done this, and right in our basement, and I'm a little kid, and I'm like, yeah, I guess so, interesting." And she said, well, that would explain the red stain on the floor. And so I went home and I told my mother, and she said, yeah. She said, that woman's putting you on. She said, they probably spilled some red paint on the floor. So I'm just a little kid, right? I don't know from nothing. So later on, my mother told me that she had gone and looked at the Falls Church newspaper going back to 1870 or whatever. They had all the old back issues going way, way back. And sure enough, there was something in there about this man having supposedly killed his wife. And so I asked Mary Jane, the daughter, the girl who went to school with me, I said, look, you ever see any ghosts? And she said, no. Why would I see any ghosts? And I said, well, wasn't this guy supposed to have chopped his wife's head off with an axe in the basement of your house? Well, yeah, that's what they say, but I don't think, you know, she said, I don't believe it was just somebody made that up. So, then I didn't see her for a while, because we were going to different schools at that point. They moved from the house and moved to another house. And I saw her about, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years later. We were all, at that point, we were just starting high school. And I remembered her, you know, and I said, "Hi, Mary Jean, how are you?" And she said, "You remember when you asked me about that ghost thing?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Well, right after you asked me that," she said, "I thought I saw this woman's ghost walking around the hallway, and it was like she didn't have a head." And I said, "Mary Jane, you're making it up. You're just saying that because of what I asked you, you know, about this guy who killed his wife and all this stuff." And she said, no, I really think I saw him. And this woman. And I said, "Oh, yeah, sure, right." So, I didn't think any more about it. Now, you know, we were still living in the same old house on Little Fall Street. And right across the street from us, and right next to their house, where the old farmhouse where they lived, was this big oak tree. And I mean, this tree was big. This tree was as big around as, you know, like that. And then some bigger than 8 trees out here. Big, huge oak tree. And
like a pine tree?
Huh?
Pine tree.
No, not a pine tree, an oak tree. And so, one night I'm coming back, and the library was right, you go down the street and then down this other street to the library, so a lot of times I'd go over there to do my homework, and I cut through the lot next to the oak tree and go over because it was quicker over there. So one night, I'm going over there, and we're coming back, I guess. It's pretty late. It's probably 9 o'clock. It's in the wintertime, so it's dark. And I look over, and I see this figure, and it looks like this guy is standing there next to the oak tree, holding this axe over his shoulder. Now, I got to tell you, when, you know, I didn't stop to check. I didn't go over and say, "Hey, are you really an axe murderer?" No, I went home in a hurry. And of course, when I went back the next day, there wasn't anything there. But I remember that because of what happened and supposedly happened in that house.
Yeah.
It was just my imagination, I'm sure. Well, that was it. I didn't see him again. And as I said, the O'Hallorans moved out of that house and some other people moved in. So, that's all I heard. But those houses were old and they had old basements dug into the ground. And that house had an old basement. I remember the pillars supporting the floor. Normally you get in these houses, you get these big metal beams that hold the floor. These were tree trunks that they cut.